Be my wife just for tonight. The millionaire Dr. Syed, but his real reason shattered her heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Be my wife just for tonight, the millionaire doctor said, but his real reason shattered her heart. The night shift at Westbrook Hospital was quiet, the kind of silence that only existed after midnight. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly over the tiled hallway, casting pale reflections on polished floors. Anna Monroe, a 7-year-old nurse with tired eyes and a coffee-stained uniform, moved briskly between patient rooms. Her body was exhausted, but her mind would not rest. Her father's medical bills were stacked in a drawer back home, and every beep of a monitor reminded her why she could not afford to stop. When she turned the corner toward the surgical wing, she almost collided with him. Dr. Ethan Cole. Everyone in the hospital knew his name. The youngest heart surgeon in the city, heir to the Cole Foundation, and the man whose calm voice could command a room. But tonight, his face was different. The usual confidence was gone, replaced by something raw, almost desperate. "Dr. Cole?" she asked carefully. "Are you all right?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the empty corridor, then at her, really at her, as if searching for something solid to hold on to. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, steady, and trembling all at once. "Be my wife," he said. Anna blinked. Sure, she had misheard. "I am sorry, what?" "It is exastergawantus with friends." "Be my wife," Ethan repeated, this time softer, as though the words themselves could shatter if spoken too loud. "Just for tonight." The hum of the hospital machines filled the silence between them. Anna's heart thudded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Was this a joke? Some kind of test? She looked at him, trying to read his expression, but his eyes were shadowed by exhaustion and grief. "Dr. Cole, I think you need rest." He cut her off gently, pulling a small velvet box from the pocket of his white coat. Inside was a simple silver ring. "I am not asking for love," he said. "I am asking for a favor. You will be paid, of course." Anna stepped back, stunned. "A favor? What are you talking about?" "There is a gala tonight," he continued, his tone clipped but fragile. "It is for the hospital's new heart foundation. They expect me to attend with my wife." He looked down for a second, his jaw tightening. "My mother's name is on that foundation. She passed away 3 months ago. And I told the board I had already married." The confession hung in the air like a secret too heavy to keep. Anna stared at him, speechless. "You lied?" she whispered. "I did," he admitted. "And tonight, if I show up alone, the board will revoke the grant. Hundreds of patients, people like your father, will lose their funding." Her breath caught. "He knew about her father's treatment? How do you—" "I read every employee's file," Ethan said quietly. "I know you are struggling. I know you work double shifts to keep him in care. I can help you, Anna. Let me help you just for tonight." He held out the ring, not as a romantic gesture, but like an offer of survival. Her mind raced: rent overdue, medication unpaid, eviction notice waiting on her kitchen counter. "This is crazy," she murmured. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes crazy is the only thing that works." For a long moment, she stared at the ring. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Fine," she said, "but only for tonight." Ethan exhaled, almost in relief, and slipped the ring into her palm. "Then, Mrs. Cole," he whispered, his lips curving in the faintest broken smile, "our night begins now." The elevator doors closed behind them, and for the first time in her life, Anna felt like she had stepped into a story she did not understand, one that would change everything before the morning came. The rain had already started by the time Anna and Dr. Ethan Cole stepped outside the hospital. The city shimmered beneath a thin silver curtain, streetlights reflecting off wet asphalt. A sleek black car waited at the curb, its engine humming softly. Ethan opened the door for her without a word. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then climbed in, clutching her worn purse like a shield. Inside, the leather smelled of mint and rain. Ethan sat beside her, his posture perfectly straight, his eyes fixed on the blur of headlights outside. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The silence was thick enough to hear the rhythm of her heartbeat. Finally, Anna cleared her throat. "You said this was for a gala. What exactly do you need me to do?" He turned to her, his gaze steady. "Just stay close to me. Smile when people greet you. Let them believe you are my wife. Nothing more." "Nothing more," she echoed, though her voice trembled. "And after tonight, I will make sure your father's bills are paid in full. You will not have to worry again." The soupy kind of self-eining Dane of the Wonable. She wanted to protest, to tell him that dignity meant more than money, but the truth was, she had run out of choices. Her father's next surgery was scheduled in less than a week. Without payment, it would be canceled. When the car pulled up to the Grand Harbor Hotel, Anna froze. The building rose like a glass palace, its golden lights spilling across the rain-soaked pavement. She glanced down at her soaked sneakers and wrinkled scrubs. "I cannot go in there looking like this." Ethan gave a brief nod to the driver. "Upstairs, Suite 1802. The elevator ride was silent except for the soft ding of each floor. When the doors opened, a team was already waiting: stylists, a tailor, a woman with a rolling rack of gowns that shimmered under the chandelier. Anna stared in disbelief. Ethan said simply, "You need to look the part." Then, almost gently, he added, "I will wait outside." Hours seemed to blur. The stylist worked quickly. Hair, makeup, a floor-length silver dress that caught the light every time she moved. When she finally looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The woman staring back looked confident, elegant, someone who belonged in his world. There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," she said. Ethan stepped inside, still in his black tuxedo, the bow tie slightly undone. For a moment he said nothing. His eyes moved from her hair to the shimmer of the gown, then back to her face. "You look perfect," he said quietly. Anna's breath caught. No one had ever said that to her before. "Do I really look like your wife?" she asked, half teasing, half terrified. He met her eyes, a small smile tugging at his lips. "More than you know." He offered his arm. She hesitated, then placed her hand on it, the faint scent of his cologne brushing her senses. Together they walked down the hallway toward the ballroom doors. As they entered, hundreds of eyes turned to them. The orchestra swelled, crystal chandeliers glittered like stars, and the announcer's voice echoed across the marble floor. Dr. Ethan Cole and his wife, Anna Cole. Applause followed. Anna forced a smile, feeling the weight of every gaze. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, "Just breathe. You are safe with me." But his voice held something else too, something unspoken, almost pleading. And as the night unfolded under the glittering lights, Anna could not shake the feeling that the man beside her was hiding more than a lie. He was hiding a heart that had forgotten how to love, and tonight, for reasons she did not yet understand, he needed her to remind him. The ballroom was alive with glitter and laughter, a sea of gowns and tuxedos swirling beneath the chandelier light. Anna stayed close to Ethan, her hand looped lightly around his arm as they moved through the crowd. Everywhere she looked, there were cameras, champagne flutes, and faces that smiled too wide. She could feel the weight of those smiles pressing against her skin. These were people who lived in a different world, people who had never worried about rent or medical bills. For a moment she wondered if anyone could tell she did not belong. A woman in a red silk dress approached them, her perfume sharp and expensive. "Ethan," she purred. "So glad you finally brought your mysterious wife. We were beginning to think she did not exist." Anna forced a polite smile. "It is lovely to meet you." The woman's gaze flicked from Anna's face to her hands, to the simple silver ring that now looked far too small for this world. "How romantic," she said, the word dripping with disbelief. "And where did you two meet?" Ethan's voice was calm. "In the hospital," he said. "She saved a patient's life on her first week. I suppose I never recovered after that." The woman blinked, caught off guard. Laughter bubbled around them, and the tension dissolved like sugar in champagne. Anna glanced up at him, surprised by how easily he could lie and how gently he had done it. For the first time that night, she saw warmth in his eyes instead of distance. As the evening went on, they danced once beneath the golden lights. Ethan's hand rested at her waist, guiding her in perfect rhythm. "You are doing well," he murmured. "They believe us." She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you?" He hesitated. "I want to." The words hung between them. strange and fragile. But before she could answer, a voice cut through the music. Dr. Cole! An older man approached the hospital's chairman. His suit gleamed, his smile sharp. Your mother would have been proud tonight, he said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. Ethan's expression faltered. Just for a second. Thank you, he said quietly. The chairman turned to Anna. And you, Mrs. Cole, must be thrilled to stand beside him. His mother's legacy lives on through this foundation. Anna nodded, not trusting her voice. Ethan's jaw tightened. His eyes drifted toward the stage, where a portrait of a beautiful woman stood framed in gold. Dr. Margaret Cole, his late mother. Anna saw it then, the reason for the lie. The weight in his voice when he said, just for tonight. This gala was not just an event. It was a memorial. He could not face it alone. Later, when the crowd thinned, they slipped out to the balcony overlooking the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. Below them, the skyline glowed like a sea of quiet fire. Ethan leaned against the railing, his voice barely above a whisper. My mother built this hospital. She believed in helping those who could not afford care. But the board wants to sell part of it to private investors. Tonight was my last chance to protect her work. Anna listened, her heart softening. So you lied to keep her dream alive? He nodded once. It is not something I am proud of. But without a wife beside me, they would have seen me as unstable, still grieving. I needed someone strong. The same person of a batter sign, it many Dacras and the great men. She looked at him, her voice trembling. You could have asked anyone. Why me? Ethan's eyes met hers. Because when I see you in the hospital, you do not treat people like cases. You treat them like humans. My mother would have liked you. The words hit deeper than she expected. For a moment, they stood in silence, two strangers bound by secrets and borrowed promises. Then, as a breeze lifted her hair, he said softly, when this night ends, you will not owe me anything. But I think I may owe you more than I can explain. Anna turned back toward the city lights, unaware that somewhere deep inside, something had already shifted something. Neither contract nor reason could control. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of Ethan's penthouse, glinting off the glass walls and steel edges. Anna stood near the kitchen island, still wearing the borrowed silver gown from the night before, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. The city outside buzzed awake, but inside the apartment, it was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Ethan entered, already dressed in a crisp white shirt and black slacks, the sleeves rolled to his forearms. His tie hung loose, his hair still damp from the shower. He looked less like the perfect millionaire doctor from last night, and more like a man trying to remember how to breathe. I made coffee, Anna said, her voice soft. She held out a mug to him. He took it, his fingers brushing hers for a fleeting second. Thank you. They drank in silence. The air between them felt heavy, tangled with everything left unsaid. Finally, Anna spoke. So, what happens now? Ethan exhaled slowly, setting his mug down. Now we go back to normal. You return to your shifts, and I take care of the rest. The rest? She repeated quietly. You mean my father's bills? He nodded. They are already paid. You have my word. Something inside her twisted, gratitude mixed with guilt and confusion. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt strangely hollow. I do not want to be another problem you fix with money, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman who had stepped into his world with nothing but courage and a kind heart. You were never a problem, he said softly. You were the only part that made sense. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed sharply on the counter. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting in an instant. It is the hospital board, he muttered. They want to meet this afternoon. Anna hesitated. About the gala? He nodded, running a hand through his hair. Someone must have talked. They know the story about my wife does not add up. Her heart lurched. What are you going to do? I will handle it, he said quickly. This is not your burden. He picked up his jacket, moving toward the door, but she stepped in front of him. Ethan, if you lie again, it will only get worse. He froze, her words cutting through the noise in his head. For the first time, she saw the exhaustion behind his confident mask, the grief, the fear, the loneliness he kept hidden behind that perfect white coat. I am not lying to protect myself, he said finally. I am trying to protect my mother's legacy. But maybe I am doing it the wrong way. Anna's eyes softened. You cannot honor the truth by building it on a lie. And the dung, the great who whine. For a moment he just stood there, staring at her, as if trying to memorize every word. Then he nodded slowly. You are right, he said quietly. You always are. When he left, the door clicked shut behind him, leaving Anna alone in the wide, silent apartment. She looked down at the ring, still glinting on her finger. It should have felt like a promise, but now it felt like a question. Later that afternoon, as she walked back to the hospital, whispers followed her through the hallway. Two nurses turned away quickly when she passed. Someone had posted a picture from the gala on the staff board, her hand in Ethan's. The headline reading, "Who is the doctor's secret wife? Is a 9, was the bride heir." Her stomach tightened. The lie was spreading faster than either of them could control. And though she had agreed to be his wife for one night, Anna could not shake the sinking feeling that this story was far from over. Somewhere between duty and desire, a line had been crossed, and neither of them could go back. By the time Ethan returned to the hospital that afternoon, rumors had already spread through every hallway. The moment he stepped into the conference room, the board members were waiting. The chairman sat at the head of the table, a folder open before him, a photograph from the gala clipped neatly to the top. Ethan recognized it immediately, Anna's hand on his arm, both of them smiling beneath the chandelier lights. "Dr. Cole," the chairman began, his tone cool, "we appreciate your efforts to honor your mother's legacy. However, questions have been raised about your recent marriage." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "What about it?" A woman from the finance department leaned forward. "Several donors have expressed concern. They feel misled. Some say your wife is not who she claims to be." He clenched his jaw. "My wife is exactly who she says she is." "Then you will not mind if we meet her again?" The chairman pressed. "We would like to confirm some details." It posted action the next 7. Ethan hesitated for the briefest second, and that pause told them everything. The chairman closed the folder with a quiet snap. "Dr. Cole, we respect your skill and dedication, but this foundation cannot afford a scandal. If the story in the papers is true that you hired someone to pose as your wife, our donors will withdraw. The board will have no choice but to suspend your directorship." Ethan stood, his voice low but sharp. "This foundation exists because of my mother's belief in compassion, not gossip. If you want to question my integrity, do it to my face, not through headlines." Without another word, he left the room. Outside, the hallway seemed colder, quieter. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Anna. "We need to talk." He found her in the hospital courtyard, sitting on a bench under the oak tree, where patients often waited for rides home. The ring he had given her still glinted faintly on her finger. "They know, Ethan," she said softly. "Everyone knows." "I will fix it," he replied, his voice rough. She shook her head. "That is the problem. You keep trying to fix everything with money or control, but this," she gestured between them, "is not something you can manage like another surgery." He sat beside her, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant for it to go this far. I just needed one night to hold my mother's dream together." Anna turned toward him, her eyes glistening. "And now you have turned my life into a headline. Do you know what it feels like to walk into work and have everyone whisper that you sold yourself?" His chest tightened. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "You did not deserve any of this." "Then tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them who I really am. Tell them I am not your wife." Ethan's gaze faltered. "If I do that, they will destroy the foundation." "Then let them," she said, her voice breaking. "Because what you are protecting is not your mother's legacy anymore, it is your pride." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of distant sirens echoed through the air, a reminder of the world still moving around them. Finally, Anna stood, her hands trembling. "You wanted me to be your wife for one night, Ethan. I did that, but I cannot keep living your lie." She slipped the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm. When their eyes met, his were full of something close to fear. "Anna, please." But she was already walking away, her figure fading into the late afternoon light. Ethan looked down at the ring, the metal cold against his skin. It was supposed to be a simple deal, a harmless act to save his reputation. Now it felt like a confession he could never take back. For the first time since his mother's death, he felt truly alone. The woman who had been his strength, his anchor in one night of chaos, was gone, and no amount of status or money could bring her back. The following days passed in a blur of silence and headlines. Every newspaper in the city seemed to carry the same story. Millionaire doctor exposed for fake marriage scandal. Pictures from the gala flooded social media. Every frame dissected, every smile questioned. Ethan tried to work, but even inside the operating room, he could feel the whispers following him. The board had not yet suspended him, but his reputation, the one he had spent his whole life building, was crumbling fast. One evening, he sat alone in his office, the lights dimmed, the air thick with regret. On his desk lay the ring Anna had returned to him, the same silver band he had once believed could fix everything. Now it was only a reminder of what he had broken. The door creaked open. It was Nurse Kelly, one of Anna's friends. She looked hesitant but determined. "Dr. Cole," she said. "I thought you should know Anna handed in her resignation this morning." Ethan froze. "She what?" "She said she was transferring to a clinic upstate," Kelly continued. "Somewhere quieter, somewhere she would not be recognized." She hesitated, then added, "She did not take the money you transferred for her father. She said she could not accept it." When Kelly left, the room felt colder than before. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the city lights outside. For years, he had measured his worth in surgeries performed, lives saved, and headlines won. But the one person who had seen him, not the doctor, not the millionaire, but the man, was walking away. That night, rain returned to the city. It came down hard, blurring the streets into rivers of silver. Ethan drove aimlessly until he found himself outside the small apartment building where Anna lived. He sat in his car, engine idling, watching the light in her window flicker faintly. He wanted to go up, to knock, to tell her everything, the truth about his mother, about why he lied, about how real it had all started to feel. But his pride held him back. His world had always been built on control, and he did not know how to let it go. When he finally left, the ring was still in his pocket, heavy like a secret. The next morning, the hospital's board released a public statement. They suspended Ethan's position pending investigation, citing ethical misconduct and reputational damage. He watched the announcement on television, the words echoing through his empty apartment. His reflection in the dark screen looked like a stranger, a man stripped of everything except his guilt. He picked up the framed photo of his mother from the shelf. Her smile, captured in black and white, seemed both kind and knowing. "I tried to protect what you built," he whispered, "but I lost the only person who reminded me why it mattered." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. He knew what he had to do. Later that night, Ethan wrote a letter to the board. It was short, honest, and final. He admitted to everything: the lie, the arrangement, the reason behind it. He accepted full responsibility and asked that Anna's name be cleared completely. Then he packed a small bag and left the city without telling anyone where he was going. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole was not chasing success, nor hiding behind his title. He was chasing something else, something real. Somewhere, he hoped, there was still a chance to make things right, even if forgiveness was the one thing he did not deserve. And as the night swallowed the city behind him, the rain kept falling soft, relentless, and cleansing, like the beginning of something that might one day feel like redemption. A month passed. The city moved on to new scandals, new stories. But for Ethan Cole, time seemed to stand still. He had left Westbrook Hospital quietly, disappearing into a small coastal town 3 hours away. There, he worked at a free community clinic, no headlines, no fame, just patients who called him Doc and thanked him with tired smiles instead of press releases. He lived simply now, in a modest apartment above a bakery that always smelled of cinnamon. Every morning, he opened the clinic at dawn and stayed late into the night, treating fishermen, factory workers, and old veterans who could not afford medical care. The work was steady, unglamorous, but for the first time in years, he felt at peace. Still, when the sun went down and the world grew quiet, her face always found him. Anna's voice, her steady courage, the way she had looked at him as if he were more than the mask he wore, had haunted him. One rainy afternoon, Ethan was cleaning up after a long day when the doorbell above the clinic door chimed. He looked up and froze. Standing in the doorway, dripping from the storm, was Anna Monroe. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain against the windows filled the silence between them. "Anna," he breathed, his voice barely more than a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about the letter," she said quietly. "The board sent it to every department. You told them everything." He nodded once, setting down the clipboard in his hand. "It was the least I could do." She stepped closer, her hair damp and her coat clinging to her shoulders. "They cleared my name," she said. "The hospital offered me my job back, but I could not stay there. Not after everything that happened." Ethan's throat tightened. "You should not have had to leave." Anna looked at him for a long moment. "You left too." "I had to," he admitted. "I needed to remember why I became a doctor in the first place. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that it was about people, not prestige." He paused, then added softly, "You reminded me." Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "You cannot just vanish and expect everything to make sense again. And they were did it is that a bass in the Maya self of it. In the ballast, I did not expect anything," he said. "I just hoped one day you might understand." Anna looked around the small clinic, the cracked walls, the worn-out furniture, the simple chartboard that replaced sleek hospital tech, and then she looked back at him. "You really started over." He gave a faint smile. "It turns out I do not need a title to save lives. I just needed to stop trying to save myself." A silence stretched between them, filled with everything they had not said. Finally, Anna reached into her bag and pulled out something small, a velvet box. She placed it on the counter and opened it. Inside was the silver ring. "I kept it," she said. "I told myself I hated everything it stood for, but I could not throw it away." Ethan stared at the ring, his chest tightening. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because," she said softly, "when you left, I realized something. That night was not fake for me. Not the way I smiled, not the way I felt." Ethan took a slow breath. "Anna," she shook her head gently, "you do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. It is choosing to see what can still be good after everything breaks." The rain outside softened to a drizzle. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt the weight in his chest lift just a little. He looked at her, his voice quiet, full of something raw and real. "I do not deserve a second chance." Anna smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but sometimes the heart gives it anyway." Outside, the storm faded into a calm hush. Inside that small clinic, something fragile but alive began to heal, one breath, one truth, one heartbeat at a time. The next morning, the air in the coastal town smelled of rain and sea salt. The storm had passed, leaving the streets washed clean and quiet. Ethan arrived early at the clinic, unlocking the door just as the first light broke across the horizon. He had not slept much, but for the first time in a long while, his heart felt steady. He poured himself a cup of coffee, staring at the small velvet box that now sat on the counter, the one Anna had left behind the night before. The ring glimmered faintly in the dawn light, no longer a symbol of lies, but of something fragile that still had meaning. When he heard footsteps behind him, he already knew it was her. "Could not sleep either?" Anna asked softly, walking in with 2 paper cups of coffee from the bakery downstairs. He smiled faintly. "Old habits die hard." They sat together at the small wooden table by the window, watching the world wake up. The silence between them felt different now, not heavy, but calm, like the quiet after a storm. Anna took a deep breath. "There is something you should know," she said. "When the hospital offered me my job back, they also offered to reopen the foundation under new management. They asked me to help run the patient outreach program." Ethan looked up, surprised. "That is incredible, Anna. You deserve that." She hesitated. "They also asked if you would consider returning as a consultant. They want your name attached again. They believe people will forgive you if they see you working side by side with the community." He shook his head slowly. "I do not care about forgiveness from the press or the board. I just want to make sure the patients still get care." "That is exactly why they need you," she said. "Not the old version of you, the one sitting here now." Her words landed softly but with weight. Ethan stared out the window, watching a fisherman untangle his nets by the dock. "I do not know if I can face that place again." Anna reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Then do not go back for them. Go back for her, your mother. She built that hospital to help people like the ones you treat here. You can still honor her the right way." Ethan looked down at their joined hands. The warmth of her touch anchored him, steadying the ache that had lived inside him for too long. "Anna," he said quietly, "when I lost everything, I thought I deserved it. But when you walked into this clinic yesterday, I realized what I really lost was hope. And you gave that back to me." She smiled, her eyes soft. "Hope was always there, Ethan. You just needed someone to remind you where to look." A few moments passed before she stood and reached for her bag. There is a community fundraiser next week for the new outreach program, she said. I told them I would come back with an answer, and maybe a partner. Ethan watched her walk toward the door, her reflection framed in the morning light. Before she left, he spoke again, his voice low and certain. Anna, wait. She turned. He rose from his chair, crossing the room until he stood in front of her. He opened the velvet box, revealing the same silver ring that had once started it all. This ring began as a contract, he said. But what I felt that night, what I feel now, is not something you can write in a deal. It is real. Anna's breath caught, tears shining in her eyes. Ethan, are you sure? He nodded. I am sure of one thing. I do not want another night, another storm, another life without you in it. The morning light touched their faces, soft and golden. Anna smiled through her tears. Then maybe this time, she whispered, we do it for real. It not always. Outside, the town bells began to ring, and inside the little clinic, Ethan slipped the silver band back onto her finger, not as part of an agreement, but as a promise born from truth.